today, the branding and the buyer journey. So let me start with, okay, so promotional products, what are they? They're typically branded apparel and hard goods that you would use in marketing strategies or within internal company culture. And the 4 different topics that I'm going to focus on are brand recognition, event-driven marketing, current client engagement, and drip marketing. So when you talk brand recognition, it's when you see a logo, you know who it is. You have thoughts and feelings behind each logo that you're seeing. So the ones that I put up here are pretty easy to identify. It's LinkedIn, it's Apple, it's TikTok, it's Starbucks. And 89% of consumers can recall the brands on promotional products they've received in the last couple of years. So event-driven marketing, that's when you're talking conferences and trade shows and product launches or rebranding. And so a lot of times you'll go to a conference, let's say, and everyone has their booth setups and their tablecloths and all that. And a lot of times you're going to see the same items on everyone's table, a chapstick, a pen, maybe a bag, a notebook, something like that. So it's really, it's worth the effort to take the extra step to think about who is attending this conference, what is going to align with what they're going to actually want and use. And you can have that same budget or spend for your giveaways, but putting that intentional thought behind it is going to really help your engagement and then your brand perception, because you're putting that extra thought in there. So back to the quality of the items. So, you know, that's a reflection of your brand. So you definitely want to put in the extra, time to think about what's going to make sense for the event or the launch or the rebranding. The next slide, I'm going to show like a launch. So, you know, Barbie, I went and saw it 3 times in the theaters last year or this year. And so this is like a cohesive launch package for that movie. You know, you have your old school for all the elder millennials that are watching. You have the old school kind of little jewelry box branded by Barbie. And then you have a notebook, a pen, water bottles, and all that stuff. And that's just a great way to launch new products with like a cohesive collection of items. For current client engagement, the things that I like to focus on, or a lot of my clients focus on, are deal closure gifts. If you've been working closely with a team and you're finally getting the deal closed, sending them a gift, thank you or year-end gifts. It's holidays right now, and that's the busiest time of the year for my company because people that may not be sending branded items during the first 3 quarters, the last quarter is when they're going to spend their money to recognize their current clients and say thank you. Referral gifts, that's great, incentivizing people to give you leads. And then follow-up or a re-engagement touch point is also a really good way to re-engage maybe a client that's dropped off your sales cycle. 90% of recipients remember the gifts that they receive. So it's just a really great touch point to let people know you're thinking about them or you appreciate working with them throughout the year. This is an example from Amex. They sent this out to their certain tiers of their Amex cards, and you see a water bottle, a custom box, a notebook, and a pen. So that's an example of that. Drip marketing. So when you think drip marketing, you're thinking, you know, emails, like an email sequence that's going out. You know, if the end user or the recipient does this, then they get this email and that kind of stuff. But adding a branded piece as a follow-up gives you another touch point to leverage when engaging with prospective clients. So I do have an example. This is a really big one, but you can do something smaller than this, but it has my name on it. And inside you can have a custom message. I don't know if I'm so bad at this mirroring. There we go. And then, or you can even just send these canisters alone, mailed alone, and you can have the variable data and stuff. And that's just a great touch point when you're doing drip marketing to kind of seal that call to action, whether it's just getting them to respond or being able to call them and say, did you get that gift I sent you? And then get the conversation going if the emails aren't cutting it. to get the client to engage. This is an example from Hilton. They sent pens and notebooks in a custom box for their marketing campaign. And when you think drip marketing, you want to think drip marketing promotional products, you want to think things that are easy to mail, because most likely you're not going to be physically dropping them off. So things that are easy to mail, things that can be personalized. So notebook, tote bags, water bottles, those are all kind of great choices for that. Okay, ROI with branded merch. So the most popular categories are going to be wearables. So that's something like apparel, a hat. And when you think wearables, you have to understand that to collect people's sizes is going to be a difficult feat. So unless it's something that you already know their size, I would definitely go with more of like a hat or something like that, because then you're not going to have to guess or collect that data internally for an internal company gift. I think wearables like apparel is great. Writing instruments, so pens, extremely popular. Drinkware, also very popular. So the thing about drinkware is you want to think how you use drinkware. We have a drinkware cemetery at our house. And it's kind of the drinkware that either we've gotten for free that we don't love, or it's drinkware that once we get a new favorite piece, it kind of goes in this drawer. So if you are going to give drinkware, you want to be thoughtful about it, and you want to give something that's going to stand out that people are going to be excited to get. So here's an example here. Everyone loves a Walla. And this one has branding on it. I don't know if you can see it, but it has the branding on it lasered in. So that's like a piece people are going to be super excited to get. And it's in a wallet, it's a retail brand. So that's kind of where you want to kind of put some thought behind drinkware if you are going to get that out. So when we go back to how the ROI is measured, it's by the brand recognition, which we talked about earlier, brand perception. So you want to make sure you're thoughtful about what you're giving out, and the quality and usability of the items that are received. This is a really cool company that does custom apparel, and they can even create, an on-site experience or an online experience where people build out their apparel pieces, everything from the zipper pulls to the interior lining to the panels. And so Google did this activation for their employees. I think it was probably 2 years ago. And that's just a really great way to hit a couple things on that ROI, which is the personalization part of it, the usability, and the quality to reflect on your brand. Top tips for the merch that works. So sustainability has just increased over the years. And so a little less than half of people, recipients or consumers, have a more favorable opinion if someone is including sustainability in their promotional products. Digital integration. So over 50% of marketers are using QR codes on promotional products to drive engagement. You're going to always want to think, what's the end goal with this? Why am I giving this out? Is there a call to action? If you're at a conference or a trade show, do you want them to sign up for an email list? Do you want to collect their email address, their contact information? Do you want them to go to a landing page that you can measure and kind of have something on the back end, whether it's HubSpot or something measuring who's actually scanning this QR code and interacting with that landing page? QR codes, there's so many things you can put them on. Here's an example of this koozie. It's magnetic, so it's kind of makes it extra special than just your basic koozie, but it supports QR codes. So that's kind of a fun way to incorporate a QR code. I talked about it earlier, personalization. 82% of people are saying they're more likely to do a business with a brand that's giving them a product, not only with that company's brand on it, but with some personalization to it. So there's lots of ways you can personalize items, from laser engraving someone's name on something, or if it's an apparel piece, having their name somewhere on it. So that's a really great touch point if you are giving something to just individuals and their names. And then Gen Z and millennials, I think they are quickly becoming the decision makers at a lot of companies for a lot of things, getting you in through that gate that you need to get through to schedule that meeting. And so 84% of Gen Z and millennials, they're more likely to do business with a company that gives them promotional products. And that kind of circles back to making sure you're giving something of quality or usability, so it's a reflection of your brand. How to get started. So you probably already have a marketing strategy, but if you don't, you want to make sure you align them with some KPIs so you can measure how they're doing. The most important thing, I think, is making sure you have a budget, a timeline, and a call to action that you're working towards. The people in my business were called distributors. So you want to find a reputable distributor to work with, and that they should be able to project manage the branded merchandise portion of your strategy, as well as come up with that custom ideation that's going to work for you. So you're not just going to 4imprint or Vistaprint and kind of doing random searches. And also those kind of sites are more self-service. So you're not going to know the quality of the items you're going to get. If you get the items and the quality is not there, you don't have anyone to kind of go back and talk to. So I say, leave it up to the professionals. I'm in those resources all day long, and I know which suppliers have the best quality. I can get spec samples for you. So it's really important to find a reputable distributor that you like to work with, that will help you and just make it easy, so that you're, saying yes or no. You're just giving feedback. You're not wading through Google searches all day trying to figure out what's the best t-shirt to get, what's the best hat to get, what's the water bottle to get, and all that kind of stuff. So so I can open it up to Q&A. You can find me on LinkedIn under Hoopla Boise, or my name, Christina Maag, or you can follow us on Insta, or you can just go to our website, and all our contact information is there as well.
Great. Thank you for all the great information. I do have a few questions that have come in. The first one is, if you have a smaller budget, how do you decide when to send a gift and which customers to send it to? Is it better to go with a more well-known popular brand or something with more functionality?
I don't think it matters. It really depends on the demographic of the recipient and what you're trying to convey. If it's just like a thank you for doing business with us type of gift, I think you can come up with great ideas that aren't brand names. Now, if you're trying to kind of get into a meeting with, like, let's say a CEO, yeah, you're going to probably want to go with a retail brand. And I think if you have a smaller budget, that's why it's so important to work with a distributor, because you give them the budget, you give them the timeline, you give them the quantity. And if you have information on the demographic of the recipients, they will come to you with custom ideas that are going to fit all of your check boxes. And you're just going to be shopping from there with, let's do this one, let's do that one. Like you need a professional to help you. So there's millions of things to choose from, basically. And so I think having a trusted partner in finding the items is super important.
Yeah. I know you mentioned too, like, it's really good to identify who your demographic is, and that kind of helps identify what gifts. And you kind of touch on, like, it's helpful if you hire a distributor. Does the same thing apply when trying to identify, like, what truly are the best gifts to give to different demographics?
Yeah, I mean, when you say hire a distributor, so basically, which is what I am, we don't, most of us don't charge for the service. It's built into when you buy the product. So there's no additional fee to use a professional. So I just want to point that out, that, you're just actually, I think you learn when you own a business to not try to do everything yourself. And I think that's super important, because you can't be the expert at everything. So that little piece, find a distributor. They're not going to charge you extra for them to come up with ideas. As for the demographic, I mean, like, if it's, 90% men and they're in their 50s and 60s, they're not going to like the same thing as a 50% men and women mix that are, Gen Z. Like, that's what I mean by know your demographic. If you're going to a medical conference versus going to, like, a teacher's conference, that's, medical sales. They're probably always on the go. Oh, let's do portable chargers or something for the car, because they're always going to meetings, in pharmaceutical sales. Now, if you're doing a teacher's conference, they're going to be wanting notebooks or maybe some wellness things, like, that's what I mean by understanding your demographic.
Yeah, I think that's a great clarification. Another question that came up was when you're talking about drip marketing. I know I myself have received messages before that are like, if you do this demo, I'll give you a gift. Is it better to have this kind of like exchange, or is it sometimes better to just like send a gift if it's someone that you're trying to sell to?
It depends. I know I always say this. It depends on what you want the end result to be. And I think if you're just trying to get a meeting, I think a really effective way to get a meeting with someone is to say, hey, if you can schedule a Zoom meeting with me, and we do the Zoom meeting, I will order food for the people attending the Zoom meeting, making it just super simple. They're in their office. They just have to go on Grubhub or whatever, put their order in, and then they sit in and listen to your meeting for an hour during lunchtime. I think that's really effective. Now, if you're trying to do more than that, and start a conversation, I think showing that you've done a little research behind the scenes on their brand or their company or their demographic or their focus, and picking a product that is personalized to them shows the thought behind how much thought you put behind wanting to get in front of them and work with them. I don't know if that cleared
No, I
that
think
up.
that's helpful. Kind of to jump off of that. So, in your experience, what triggers or touch points work best when trying to close a deal? And is it overwhelming for the prospect when they receive more than one gift?
I think it's almost like, I know this is probably not PC to give this as an analogy, almost like dating. You don't really want to love bomb someone because then they're going to be creeped out most likely. So I think it's a strategic amount of reaching out and explaining what you do, and then having some touch points and not having them be one after another, but kind of spaced out, that makes sense to align with how you've been communicating with them. So it takes a little bit of, I think, emotional intelligence to understand how to implement it best.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Kind of like another question, just more general. So, what's kind of like a piece of advice you have for companies who are kind of looking to get started with doing more promotional gifts? Like, what is the best way, and what should people consider when starting this?
Definitely budget is, like I said earlier, budget, who your target audience is, if there's a call to action. But really what you need to get started is you're going to need, if you don't have a brand guideline, that's totally fine. But most people have an identified brand color. So you're going to want to convey to your distributor what your brand color. PMS is the best way to convey it. But if you don't know what that is, you can give someone like me your hex code and we can convert it for you and keep it on file, because what that's going to do is every single time you brand something, you're going to have a cohesive story on the color that's being used, because that doesn't look good. If one day if your color's red, let's say, and one item you have has this one shade of red, and then another one has a different shade of red, it shows a lack of detail, and I don't think that looks good. And then the other thing you're really going to need too, and a lot of people don't know what this is when they're first starting out, is something called a vector logo. And so that's typically only opened in Illustrator. And layman's term is when you send a JPEG, a PNG, even if it's high resolution, when you make it bigger, it's going to become little squares to make the image. So when you're working with promotional products, you're going to want to do a vector logo, and that means you can manipulate it in Illustrator and make it as big as you want, and it's always going to stay smooth and like high quality. And then that also gives my team the ability to change the colors of the logo or do anything that we need in manipulating it for whatever product we're putting it on.
Yeah, no, I love that. I really appreciate all your advice. I think you have a lot of great insights when it comes to this. And just a reminder, if you guys have follow-up questions or are interested in incorporating this into your own companies, that you can reach out to Christina on LinkedIn and ask her some questions.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you.